Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for another episode of Spanning the Need. Tonight, we'll be talking sports with Executive Director of Athletics at Youngstown State University, Ron Strollo. We'll discuss a variety of topics about what's going on in athletics at the collegiate, as well as all the way to the NCAA. Ron, thank you for joining us, taking time out of a busy schedule. I know I can only imagine how busy things are in the last couple of weeks, especially the last couple of months with the upcoming fall sports.
Yeah, and it's been busy for everybody. These are kind of crazy times and unusual times. So I think everyone's busy from across campus to across the world. So it's a different kind of busy.
So Ron, you've been with Youngstown State for a good portion of about 19, 20 years, and you've been very, very influential on doing a lot of things, bringing a lot of facilities to YSU. Not many people know. How did you get your start kind of moving up the athletic director spot, and where did that go from there?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, it was something I never even really thought of when I was in college. I had an accounting teacher in Austin Fitch and that I really liked, and I ended up deciding to go into accounting and started working for University Hospitals up in Cleveland for a short time, and then came back home and started working with Hilbarth and King, a CPA firm, obviously, and based in Youngstown, and had a chance to work in the downtown office and worked there for 3 years. And the business manager job opened up in the athletic department, and my dad had been volunteering with Coach Tressel, now President Tressel, in the football program, and he was the athletic director. And I got an opportunity to talk to him about the job, and he was dumb enough to hire me, and that's really how I got my start. And obviously, 5 years later, he moved on to Ohio State, and they gave me a chance to be in this position.
I don't think it was a dumb move.
Don't ask him.
Well, you've been around a long time. Not many athletic directors around the country in collegiate stay for that long.
Yeah, and maybe that's because my goal in life a long time ago wasn't to be the athletic director at a bigger school or anything like that. Both Nicole and I's families from here, and family means an awful lot to us, and this university means a lot to both of us, and so both our kids are now YSU grads, and our son had an opportunity to play basketball here, so it's been part of our family. Nicole's mom worked in financial aid. Nicole's dad was a punter on the football team, and I could probably go on and on about the connections our family has with the university. And so it made a lot of sense. And I've obviously had a great opportunity to work with a lot of great people. And with that were some great presidents, and the board of trustees have always been supportive, and have given us a chance to provide to the student athletes what we need for them to be successful both on and off the field.
Now, I can only imagine what has been going on in the YSU athletic department, as well as every other athletic department in the country in the past 3 months. What has been some of the things that have been going on behind the scenes that not many people know?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it started with trying to make what were the right decisions about, closing down the spring sports, and things happened so fast. If you look back to that week where, they started canceling the NCAA basketball tournament, and the NBA started shutting down. And, so it kind of started there, trying to understand what was going on in the world, and then figure out what was the best interest of your students and what was going on with the university. And so, that was a start. And then, so we went through a stretch where we were trying to figure out, how are our kids going to finish the semester out academically? And then when we started to get a sense of, how long this was going to affect us, we started moving our plans towards what's our summer going to look like? Are we going to have student athletes on campus? And then obviously, too, the budget impacts of everything that was going on. And then obviously the summer, we're looking at the fall and trying to figure out what that looks like. And to be honest with you, it's a lot of planning and trying to create a lot of different scenarios for things you still, to this day, I mean, we're headed in July, and, really, in a lot of ways, we're planning for a normal fall, but, but our 15th, 16th, and 17th, and 18th plan are for different things happening, whether our fall gets interrupted or if it never really starts the way we wanted it to. So it's a lot of planning.
So what are some of those difficult decisions that you've had to make in the last 3 months with no sports to help with budgets, to do what you need to do just to survive?
Yeah, I mean, budget-wise, in some ways, because we're dealing with 2 fiscal years, obviously. Our fiscal year ends on June 30th. So, the first thing was trying to figure out how, to help the university and be a partner in the university of trying to close the books of the fiscal year 20 out on, which is coming up June 30th. And to be honest with you, that kind of was a little bit easy for us because everything got shut down. And so, basically our expenditures, everything we shut those down. We're able to save, unfortunately, because of the spring sports being canceled. The fortunate thing is we were able to save a lot of resources that, we had budgeted for spring travels and different things like that. So, but we were able to really hold back on expenditures and that type of stuff to close out that year. Well, while we were trying to figure out how to continue academically, then we were starting to move our plans to what's our budget going to look like? And what are some of the things that we're going to need to do as obviously the entire university was impacted, by the state subsidy, and which is obviously impacted by state tax dollars and the unknown of what's our enrollment going to look like. So, we tried to put up some different plans and put those on a piece of paper, and really not knowing, are we going to be able to sell football tickets, or are we going to be able to collect suite revenue and, in the loges, all those type of things are different scenarios. And quite frankly, a lot of them are still playing out for us. So, all of our coaches and administration, we have a bunch of different budgeting scenarios of 10% cuts in operating budgets to 20% to 30%, because we still don't know what this whole fiscal year is going to look like. So, our budget numbers that are on a piece of paper probably don't mean an awful lot, to be honest with you. So we're going to have to adjust as the year goes on and as we get a sense of where our revenues are going to be. And I would guess, I don't want to speak for the university, but I would guess they're very similar. We're not going to know for several months what our enrollment's going to look like. And obviously that's a major source of revenue, and we're here to serve those students, but we don't know how many students we're going to be serving. And, so I think, a lot is still to play out, but we knew that our resources are going to be down. And so we had to look at, a lot of cuts going into the year, and whether it's positions or some operating lines that, I think one of the things that this whole thing allowed us to do was to really try to figure out what's important to us. So, so we've had to go through some layoffs and not fill some positions, and then we're still dealing with our league office and trying to figure out, creative scheduling things to do with our fall, winter, and spring sports that can help us save some dollars, and maybe get cut back a little bit on officiating expenses and other things like that. I won't throw a little shot at you about your officiating background, but, just every line item, just trying to figure out what is it that we can do to save some money, but what is most important to our student athletes and their experience here and their ability to finish their education.
Well, yeah, and thanks for the shot. I appreciate it. I've been thrown a little bit for officiating, and as people may not know, I officiate high school basketball, softball, and volleyball. So I have a little bit of background and help some of the athletic departments. So Yeah, I'll take that one, Ron.
Right.
So we talk about the student athletes continuing their education, even if they don't have sports. Has the NCAA given them some sort of maybe an extra year of eligibility, or have they talked about that to help because I know, especially I love sports. And if I'm playing a sport at the college level and I didn't get my senior year, is that something I'm able to become eligible from the NCAA?
Yeah. So early on, when we had to kind of put a halt to our spring season, most of our spring sports had gone through their non-conference season. So our softball team had a chance to travel south and play some games, and same thing with our baseball program. And we were just getting to the point where we were going to start playing, Horizon League competitions. And that's really, for our student athletes, that's really when the season begins. Everything else is kind of preseason. So in a lot of ways, those seniors especially lost their senior year. And the NCAA stepped up right away and granted them another year of eligibility. And really all of the student athletes. So, but that's the right thing to do. But it also created some complexities back on campus because, your coaches had already gone out and recruited to replace those kids. Or at least in theory they would have. And, so then we had to figure out, all right, how are we going to pay for this under these circumstances to be able to bring this senior class back on campus? And fortunately for us, some of our seniors were graduating and ready to move on and had already accepted jobs. And so they weren't coming back. And there were some situations where our coaches still had some scholarships in their budget that weren't expended. So we were fortunate that didn't really affect us financially. But even that was, part of the decisions of trying to figure out what's the best thing and what can we afford to do. And really, I'm kind of glad, that we're in this situation because, to be honest with you, it's really hard for our coaches right now. Recruiting's been canceled for the most part. So, a lot of our sports, baseball, softball, basketball, football, really spent a lot of the summer months, on the road recruiting. And because of what's going on, obviously they haven't been on the road. So, so really, we need to stay focused on our students that are here on campus. So I think it's good in the sense that they're not on the road and can pay more attention to our current students.
Just out of curiosity, how many student athletes does Youngstown State have?
So we're the other challenge here is we got caught. I don't know if caught's the right word, but we're in the midst of a sports expansion program. And, so it was a 2-year plan that we had provided the president. The president was really, I think there was a little bit of concern about the demographics in Northeast Ohio. And the president was really trying to figure out, all right, how can we attract, students from outside our 3-county area? And, clearly, intercollegiate athletics is a way to do that. You see that with Division III institutions across this country, and it's a way to draw kids to your campus. And so we put a plan in front of him to add men's swimming, add women's lacrosse, and then we doubled our cross-country rosters. So we used to have 12 men cross-country runners and 12 women, and now we've got 24 on both sides. So, and for the
record, your I should say Gorby's team, which is part of that, has won 10 division conference titles, numerous national. I mean, it's one of the prestige programs in that area.
Yeah, and actually, and you probably need to have Coach Gorby on this show, but he has 43 championship rings. 43 in his time coaching.
43? So, is he that old?
Yeah. It's getting expensive to keep buying him those rings, but we knew he would do a good job with those kids and give them good experiences. So we we were halfway through that process this fiscal year that's ending. We had added men's swimming competitively last year. So we competed last year, but we only had about 12 men's swimmers. And to be honest with you, we probably stole a men's tennis student athlete to jump in the pool just to make sure we had a team. And then, we had hired a lacrosse coach, and she recruited all last year to bring a freshman class in this coming fall. So long story short, we had about 400 student athletes before this all started. And this fall, we'll have 500 student athletes on our campus. And with that in 21 sports, we're pretty close in those two categories, if not the second biggest athletic department in the state of Ohio, behind Ohio State. So that's something to be proud of, but it's also a lot of work for our staff and trying to make sure those kids have good experiences.
Well, I'll vouch that lacrosse in the state of Ohio is one of the fastest growing sports in OHSA, Ohio High School Athletic Association. So to bring that, you have a great area to recruit from. Just like football, we have this region that we recruit from. So, and I think that brings up a good point where you're going to have roughly close to 500 student athletes coming towards fall semester. You have probably roughly maybe 5-6 fall sports, including football and soccer and some other ones, where now, and I read a report, and I'll say it's from ESPN. They're talking about like Rutgers players test positive, 2 Rutgers football players, LSU football players, at least 30 athletes possible quarantine, Kansas State. And I mean, I can go on and on, and I know you've seen these reports as well, that now you have these student athletes. How do you provide safety for them when they're congested in a locker room, in a very confined area where social distancing may not be a good thing to do when you're playing certain sports?
Yeah, fortunately, we have a great staff in our department. I to be honest with you, I keep my nose out of it. Ethan Solger, our head athletic trainer, and really all of our athletic training staff and our strength and conditioning staff, and the great resources that we have on campus have developed plans methodically and putting them on a piece of paper and working with the coaches and seeing what the governor has put out as far as recommendations, but also the NCAA and trying to see what the NBA is doing and Major League Baseball and the NFL, and trying to put a plan together and coming together and agreeing on that plan. And I'm proud that I think we here at Youngstown State have been out in front of this. I think that team that I just talked about has done a great job putting a plan together. We were allowed to start having student athletes on a voluntary basis on June 1st. Many institutions waited till the middle of June or waiting till the beginning of July. But we started bringing student athletes on campus June 1st, and we probably had about 60 student athletes on campus. And then every 2 weeks, we take another step forward. So those first 2 weeks, we had a limited number of student athletes. They only worked out outside. After 2 weeks, we brought in probably another 25 more student athletes. Now we're starting to do some stuff in the training, in the weight room. Again, social distancing, cleaning things. And when you start with smaller numbers, your staff can practice, those policies and procedures. But they've done a lot of things, our kids get their temperature checked. They get a lot of questions that they have to answer before they come into the facility. But really, for the most part, we've locked the locker rooms, so there's not a place for them to hang out. They go home and shower and do their own laundry and stuff like that. So, places where we can control the kids, I think we've done a really good job. They wear masks in the building and stuff like that. So, I feel good about where we're at. Everything's a little bit of a gamble because you never know. But knock on wood, our kids have really done a good job doing what we've asked them to do while they're in the building. And we can only hope when they're not in the building, they're doing the same stuff. And that's the challenge, I think, for us is, these kids don't live in a bubble. And so we could do a great job with these kids for 2 hours of the day, but they could also, when they leave us, all pile in the same car and drive to Chipotle and, and play video games sitting side by side. And we're trying to educate them on, the responsibility they have, not only amongst their family members, but their teammates and the community.
And we talk about COVID and budgets and how certain sports support certain collegiate budgets. Like, for example, Ohio State's football program pretty much is probably one of the very few that actually make money.
Right.
And how does that work when, hey, we're moving towards the fall sports? You have a variety of our big sports coming up, football, basketball, where that's revenue producing sports.
Right.
What happens if will that hurt the budget if we can't do those suites? We can't do those ticket sales. How does that change the way you think about moving forward during the next sports year?
Right. It'll be a significant impact if we don't have a football season. And even then, we probably we generate probably $1 million just in corporate sponsorships. That's the signs you see in the stadium, the programs that we sell. And some of those companies are struggling, and some of those individuals that have bought tickets or Penguin Club memberships, might be in positions where they can't renew those. So we know that our revenue is going to be down. And we've kind of built that into some of our cuts that we're planning for. But the big challenge for us is if for some reason we're not able to have a football season and that trickles into basketball season, which really is just around the corner. It starts in November. So if all that were to occur, then things could be really, really challenging for us financially. And we've talked about some of those things, and I think we have a plan, but, you sure hope you don't have to activate those plans.
Well, and I quote here from the president of the NCAA, basically in an article that said, if students are not on campus, it's unlikely that they'll have fall sports.
Yeah.
And I think, would that be a summation of what?
Yeah, and I think sometimes people get, they see these games on TV and, they start thinking of us as the NBA or NFL, and really our students, our student athletes are students. And if it's not safe for the general student to be on our campus, then it's not safe for our student athletes, and I would never envision a situation where our student athletes are here and our general student population is not here. And I also wouldn't envision a situation where, we're testing all of our students, student athletes, 2 times a week when we can't do that for our general students. I don't see that situation. But again, you never know. But yeah, if college campuses are closed, then we're closed too.
Well, and I think that brings up a great point, and you probably have seen articles across the country saying like certain teams and certain colleges have actually canceled their fall sports already without really looking at, not waiting to that final minute, but actually just canceling it altogether.
Yeah, I think there's some schools out west that have done some of that, and to be honest with you, I haven't paid a lot of attention of their process, and I know when they did it, it felt early. But, obviously they had some information that made them feel like that was the right decision to make. And, we're not there. I think we continue to plan for, a normal fall, for what normal is going to start being like. And hopefully that can happen for us.
So let's get down to now YSU and the NCAA. So What are some of the challenges that you're going to be facing in the fall, both with sports, student athletes, and just stuff in general?
Well, I've talked about some of them. It just, we have to figure out how to try to keep our kids safe. But we only have access to them for a couple hours a day. And so a lot of it's going to be education. A lot of it's going to be, how the university reacts when these kids are going into classrooms or in elevators and all those other things. And, the challenges for us is as we get more student athletes back and we get into competition is how do we travel? We have one golf coach. We have 7 or 8 kids that might travel with the golf team. So they might travel in a van for 4, 5, 6 hours. So the social distancing in a van is probably not going to happen. And we don't have enough people or sometimes even enough vans to take, only 3 kids in a van or what have you. So those are the challenges. Some of them we're going to have. And then when they sit and have meals, are we going to be able to social distance there? And then the other challenge too is, you might feel like you're doing the right thing for your student athletes and taking certain measures, but you're not even sure, the people you're competing against, are they taking similar measures? And, our kids are going to be competing, and sometimes in contact sports with other institutions, and you're not sure of the safety precautions they've taken. So, that's a lot of discussion that we're starting to have in the Horizon League in the Missouri Valley about what are the minimums that we need to require everyone to do to make sure our kids are safe against each other when they're competing. But, there's going to be times where our kids are going to be in situations where, they're not going to be able to social distance and when they're with us. And again, I think we're all naive if we think our kids are going to leave us and continue to social distance. They're all going to pile in the cars. They're college students. They're going to hang out together and, have meals together. And, so that sometimes makes you a little bit nervous about how quick something like this can spread.
And I think I want to bring up the point, and you said it a little bit earlier ago, and you said that your main priority is the safety of our student athletes.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, because you never want anything to happen to any of these kids.
No. And, and all of them are kind of, you're trying to do, take some calculated risks with them, but you're also trying to educate them. And, but it's, it's a challenge. And, our kids are anxious to get back. They've been gone for a while. So you could tell, you see the smiles on some of the kids' faces when they're coming back. And, what doesn't get talked about a lot is, just the burden that this has been on the mental health of a lot of our students. And, they look at our campus and our coaches as sometimes a release and a place that they feel more comfortable. And they lost that for 2 or 3 months there. So, it's exciting to see the kids back, but sometimes you question whether, are we bringing them back too early? Are we doing the right things? And, so there's that balance there of weighing the costs and the benefits of making these decisions. But, you see governors and making those type of decisions, trying to balance the economic impact of this and the health and wellness impact of this. It's, I don't know if there's a right answer, but, I think everyone has to do their part, though.
And I think that kind of brings up to the next question is, and what you said is the unknowns. So if you don't have fall sports, what does the future of collegiate sports look like moving forward in this coming year?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't have fall sports, then the next question is, what happens to the winter sports that really start practicing in October? And then how does that, again, affect the NCAA tournament? And I think everyone became really well educated about what the NCAA tournament means to, institutions like ours. I mean, we probably get about $1 million a year from that NCAA tournament, and through a distribution from the NCAA. And because that that tournament didn't exist last year, that $1 million check turned into about a $300,000 check. Can't really afford to have that happen again, to be honest with you. If we get to the point where we're into the spring and we're still in this situation, I mean, it's already been hard on a lot of athletic departments. You've seen a lot of sports get cut. A lot of people lose their jobs. A lot of salaries get cut. And that's just on the athletic side. But, I think it could get a lot worse than where we're at if this virus were to, make things more challenging for us.
Especially when you have the like we talked about, football, basketball, and some other sports that actually support almost the overall health of the athletic department.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked earlier. We rely a lot on the support from the community, if there's nothing here to support, we're going to lose a lot of that revenue, and it's going to affect our student athletes and what we're able to provide for them.
Well, and I appreciate the time you've taken and talk about what goes on behind the scenes that many people don't really know what goes on. Many people know about athletics. They go to the games. They support Youngstown State. They visit the campus. They visit other institutions and sometimes don't know. So I appreciate you giving us kind of a behind the scenes of what kind of really goes on in the maneuverability of going through a thing like this. In your 20-year career, is this the worst that you've seen it?
Yeah, there's no question. This is the craziest, not because I think there was, we had a financial crisis in 2008, which obviously affected us and affected everybody. But, financially, how this has impacted us, and most importantly, the health and safety piece of it is really posed a lot of challenges and questions.
Well, and I appreciate. Are you willing to take a little Q&A?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
This one is from Troy. I'm going to post it up on your screen.
Okay.
So he basically says, if they have football, will there be fans allowed to attend the games in the fall?
Yeah, my hopes are that, in a lot of this direction is going to come from probably the governor's office, but we're hoping right now that the governor is going to allow fans as long as there's social distancing, and then we may be limited to a certain percent of capacity, 25%, 50%, or 75%, and we've got a very large stadium. For our level to have almost 21,000 seats is a pretty substantial stadium. So we have an opportunity to still, put a pretty good crowd in the stadium. And I'm sure there's going to be some people that, financially may not, be able to come. And some are, for health reasons, may decide, now's not the time to be out in public. So, my hopes are that we're going to have the capacity and the ability to allow whoever wants to come to games to come to games.
And I think people don't realize this, but Youngstown State had one of the top attendance, ticket sales sold, season tickets in the last probably, 3 out of the last 5 or 6. I mean, we've been very good the last 5 or 6 years.
Attendance has dropped at all sporting events. I think if you turn on the TV, you even see some empty seats in NFL stadiums. But so, all these games, and there's just so much different entertainment. All of it can be, you can watch it on your phone now. I think that's been a challenge for a lot of people in our business is just attendance is down in every sport and every venue across the world. But we've been fortunate that this community supports our athletic programs and comes out to cheer them on.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. Okay, this one comes from Nick. I think we answered this question, but I'm going to give it a try just to please Nick, maybe just in case he missed it. It has to do with football season. So it says, this is from Nick. He says, has the football preseason started and have they been on campus?
So the answer to that question is on June 1st, we were allowed voluntary workouts. So that basically means if the kids wanted to, they can come back and and start working out and doing that stuff. So we probably on June 1st had about 45 football players. We're probably up to 60 to 65 football players right now. And I would guess in the beginning of July, we'll probably get up to, close to 80 to 100 student athletes. So the NCAA is allowing mandatory workouts to begin early, starting on July 13th. Limited time that the coaches can spend with them, but July 13th. And then on July 24th, they're going to be allowed a little bit more time. And then on August 7th will be when our real preseason starts. So, by the time we get to August 7th, I would guess that most of our student athletes would have been back on campus for almost 2 months by then.
Yeah, I mean, it's just getting them on campus, having your staff really just bringing them in one at a time and just working with them, I think is the big thing to make sure they're in compliance with the social distancing and just making sure they're safe.
Right. And, we've always felt like, we're not sure if we're doing everything. We're trying to do everything we can to keep them safe. And sometimes you question whether we should be bringing them back. But the reality is, these kids, if they weren't here, they would be going to their neighborhood gyms or LA Fitness or whatever and working out. And we like to think that maybe, we're able to provide a safer environment for them here than they might get at home.
Yeah, and I think wherever they go, they should be safe. And like you mentioned a little bit before, was these guys have probably been home for 10 weeks, depending on the lockdown. Now you're bringing them back out, coming back to campus, school. So their mental may not be there because they may not be home. Like some student athletes are not from around here. They're from all over the country.
No, there's no question. And then you also, when you get ready to start actually playing football, you want to make sure they're conditioned and healthy enough. So it's better for them to be, under our watchful eyes and under our staff's eyes than to be at home and doing things that, maybe aren't helping them.
Well, and then I think this will be our last question unless someone else has something. This one is from Eric. The question is, with social distancing, will there be a parade or tailgating before the games?
I haven't heard about what they're doing for homecoming, and I sure don't want to speak for them, but, I think there will be some challenges there. Tailgating, I especially with the new tailgate lot, I believe that, we could figure out a way to do tailgating safely. Obviously, families are going to come that, are going to, throw up their tent and do stuff together. And, as long as, they're aware of who's in their party, I think we'd be fine. And I think we would be able to, separate, the cars in the tailgate lot or do some things that we can, make everyone feel comfortable. So the plan is to still utilize the tailgate lots and allow people that want to tailgate.
Well, I think I'm good with the questions. Ron, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you've been very busy the last 3 or 4 months, so I appreciate you coming on and just talking to us about YSU athletics, the state of the athletes, and just in general.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Spanning the Need. Stay tuned tomorrow night when we'll have Eric Ryan, president of JAC Management, and the group that runs the Cavelli Center, and talk about upcoming concerts and events. I know it's something you would probably want to hear, Ron, because I know you like to attend nice concerts and events.
And I miss him. Eric does a great job, and I think the community has supported Cavelli Center and the new amphitheater, and I miss going to those concerts. I can assure you that.
Yeah. I think everyone does right now, especially when the weather's getting better. So,
right, absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you. Have a great night.